The hawk searched feverishly for Stanley. Stanley nervously rolled inside the cab. His nervous tics caused the driver to feel jumpy. He stayed in a low posture in the back seat and peered out the back window carefully. After several very strange and paranoid acts, the cab driver had to know what was going on and needed to confirm that he was not in any physical danger by driving him about. Pending Stanley's response, the cab driver fully intended to immediately put him out, potentially, and count the fare as a loss. What's going on, guy? I need to know if I'm safe and you are sane or you're out. If need be, Mr. Lucky and I can kindly get you out. The cab driver rubbed his gun seated next to him in the front seat. Sorry, I'm okay. You are in danger though, because my wife is looking for me. The cab driver's head turned upward and to the right and he furrowed his brow. He focused on the road again and felt a slight sense of relief after hearing the weird but overall seemingly non-threatening explanation. Oh, explain. And where are we going? My wife wants to hurt me. She killed my girlfriend, she put my mother in a coma, and my twin boys are in immediate danger. How can a woman do this? I understand her anger. He shrugged his shoulders and laughed a bit. You have a girlfriend, and I'm guessing that the product of that relationship are the twins? Have you contacted the authorities? What about getting a restraining order? It's not that simple. She's a witch. She learned about my girlfriend after an accident that resulted in our son's death, the premature birth of our daughter, and injuries sustained by her mother that left her in a coma. The cab driver found the whole story and conversation, especially the last bit, a bit funny and very absurd. Slightly laughing, he responded, "A witch? Really? A witch? All of our wives can be vindictive. In her case, I can understand why. Not vindictive, she's deadly." As the men engaged in this wildly entertaining conversation from the cab driver's perspective, the hawk caught a glimpse of Stanley in the rear of the cab. He swooped down and scratched the roof of the cab once and then swooped down a second time to scratch the roof. The driver heard the first swipe and ignored it. He was startled and swerved after the second vehicle swipe. What was that? No, her cat assumes any form. He's found me. Soon she'll find me and she'll find you. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. Let me out now. Your story seems so wildly exaggerated that I'm half inclined to believe it, especially after what just happened. We are approaching the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception on the right. Maybe you can pray for her and have an exorcism performed. Just let me out. Here's your money. Thank you. Just be careful. Stanley hopped out the rear of the cab and ran up the steps of the cathedral. Once inside, he drew the Holy Cross with his right hand and blessed himself. He then looked for a seat among the parishioners. After finding a seat, he began to pray. The hawk returned to the hospital and transformed himself from a hawk back into the cat. He moved to Emily's heel and rubbed his tail along her perfectly smooth legs. She motioned for him to jump into her arms. Emily bent down slightly and the cat hopped up. Tell me where he is. Did you find him? The cat purred and looked into Emily's eyes. Everything was soon revealed. A yellow cab driving east on Cumberland Avenue. The cab has claw marks or scratches on the roof in the shape of an X. Under the cover of night, she held the cat near her bosom and flew east on Cumberland Avenue. Minutes into the flight, she saw a cab with the markings described earlier. It was traveling west instead of east. Wasting no time or opportunity to capture Stanley, who was probably trying to double back, she landed in the pathway of the taxi. The cat jumped down and assumed the form of a rhino and postured himself to ram the taxi. The The sound of skidding brakes and the sight and smell of smoke emanated from the rubber tires at the rear of the vehicle. It permeated the immediate area surrounding the car. With the car fully stopped, Emily walked toward the driver's door and ripped it from its hinges. "Where is the liar and cheater who was in this cab?" The driver was terrified and wet his pants. "What are you? How did that cat transform into a rhino? I haven't much time. I have ways, painful ways to extract the information. I suspect you are an innocent pawn in a game not intended for you. Tell me what I want to know or die inside this wretched cab slowly and painfully." I told him to pray. I told him to seek an exorcism, and I dropped him off at the Catholic Church. Your honesty has saved your life. Your hesitation has cost you your vehicle. Emily looked over her shoulder and spoke to the rhino. "My darling, destroy the car." Emily turned back to the cab driver and offered him some sincere yet sarcastic advice and instruction. "If I were you, I'd exit the car." The rhino climbed onto the hood of the car and proceeded to walk over the entire vehicle. After the taxi was thoroughly smashed, the rhino used its head and horn to flip the vehicle onto its now flattened roof. The driver saw the rhino heading toward his vehicle and fumbled with his highly worn seatbelt. It worked, but occasionally got stuck when it was time to unfasten it. The cab driver unfastened the seatbelt just as the rhino climbed on top of the vehicle's hood and cleared out of the car as the rhino moved to step onto the windshield. With the deed done, Emily grabbed the rhino's horn and they instantly appeared at the bottom steps of the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception. The rhino turned himself back into the cab. Emily waved her hands and flung the double doors to the cathedral open. She walked in majestically with the cat at her side. "Where's my lying husband?" The priest responded, "Ma'am, you're disturbing mass. Be seated and quiet or leave." "Come to me, priest." Unable to control his body, he glided down the aisle to the waiting witch. Taken aback by the apparent possession of the priest, the audience collectively gasped. Several licensed concealed carry owners unbuttoned their holsters. The cat hissed. With the priest squarely in front of her, Emily asked the priest a direct question. "Where is my cheating husband?" "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, I cast out the demon or power that possesses you. This is not of God." The priest flung holy water. Emily wiped her face to remove the holy water. "I'm not possessed. I'm not a god or being overtaken by a satanic force. I'm not here to replace God. I possess a power that is far greater than any. However, I'm a woman in mourning and a woman scorned. I'm looking for the guilty party at the heart of my pain." Without further discussion, Emily ripped open the priest's shirt and in one quick move removed the priest's heart from his chest. The priest felt no pain. He looked down at his gaping chest in utter amazement, then at his heart in the woman's hand, and then directly at Emily in shock and in disbelief. It was far too much for him to fathom. In sensory overload, he passed out. The people in the audience immediately reacted. Some fainted, some yelled, and others screamed. Several armed citizens pointed their weapons at Emily. The cat made her aware of the potential danger earlier. Emily spoke to the gun owners. "You do not control your weapons as you think you do. I control both you and your weapons." Each gun turned and pointed itself at the previously armed male and female gun owners. "Show me where my murder-concealing husband is, and I will spare the priests and the armed militia's lives. This is a short offer." All the hands pointed to the man who recently ran into the mass. Stanley pushed his way out of the pew and onto the side aisle toward the rear exit. With the direct line of sight of her target, Emily allowed him to run. She commanded the priest to lie down and then gently placed his beating heart, back in his chest. She also disassembled the guns and laid their parts on the floor near their owners. "My precious cat, detain my faithful husband." The cat ran down the aisle and out the back door that Stanley hastily exited. In his haste, the door did not properly close and the cat easily slipped through the opening. Stanley was more than halfway across the parking lot when he heard a familiar voice. "Dad! Dad, don't leave me!" Stanley stopped in his tracks and turned around. It was his son, the archaeologist. Unexpected emotions swept across Stanley. and he motioned for Donald to come to him. The archaeologist ran toward his dad and wrapped his arms around his father's waist. Stanley lifted his son eye to eye with him and stared at Donald deeply. He held him tightly. Emily watched from afar, and tears flowed from her eyes and onto her cheeks. She thought aloud to herself, how could Stanley trade our family and our love so easily? Weren't we worth fighting for? Couldn't he find the strength to let us go before something as horrible as the death of his first son happened? Why didn't he come to the funeral? Emily experienced an uneasy feeling and then called out anxiously to her son, Donald, his love is not real. Donald was so desperate for love from his father that his natural ability to sense danger, truth, and lies was clouded. This was a costly mistake. Stanley wholly realized that this was not his son. He was some type of aberration or reincarnation being. His son was gone. Stanley prepared to sacrifice his life by taking the life of his son's likeness. He told himself that this was only a cat. He told himself this was only Emily's protector. He prepared himself for the awful reality that he'd have to stop living and that his life had a small amount of value left. To solidify the very final course of action, Stanley thought about his dead lover, Emily, his comatose mom, Barbara, and the twins, Chase and Chance, who needed a little more time to escape. He gently grabbed Donald's head and neck and then snapped it. He lightly laid the body at his feet and ran toward the street, hoping to find the cab. Instead of a cab, Emily called forth an approaching bus, already traveling on Cumberland Avenue, to strike Stanley, sending him several feet away and flying through the air. Emily rushed to the archaeologist. His body lay lifeless in the spot where his father placed him. Emily knelt down and spoke to Donald. Wait, my son. You left me once, but never again. The archaeologist raised himself up onto his hip, straightened his head, and gave his mother a hug. Emily looked over for her husband. He had managed to survive and was not where the bus placed him. She and Donald followed the trail of blood. Donald turned himself back into the cab. Stanley, gravely injured, had not gone far. He was clinging to life and breathing heavily. I will keep you alive and continue to make you suffer, or end your life so you can be at peace. It's your choice. To ensure you understand your options, I will repair your damaged lungs. Stanley immediately breathed freely. In that same moment, she commanded him to extend his hand with his palms facing down. Emily raised a palm-sized flame to his hand. It floated directly in front of his hand, and Stanley screamed in pain. Emily moved the flame closer, then farther away, over and over, to keep Stanley uncomfortable and worried. Give me closure. I once loved you. The truth is, initially I found you to be more of my exotic experience. You were supposed to be a college fling. You knew I played the field when you met me. My fling turned into love when I learned you were pregnant. I was still dating you until you told me I would be a father. My mom loved you from the start. My dad did not. He made it clear that he would love me less and leave me nothing if I stayed married to you. The joys of new love and fatherhood waned as my father grew sick and eventually died. Every time he and I were alone, he told me how much of a disgrace I was and that I brought shame to the family. On his dying bed, I told him about my other life, my girlfriend and the twins. I showed him a photo on my phone. He reached for and he held my hand. It was the first time in years he touched me. It was one of the handful of times in my adult life I unquestionably felt my father's love for me and toward me. He told me he loved me, Emily. Days later he died, but not before restructuring his will to include me. And although I was not certain the twins were mine, he added his twin grandsons. Till this day, Mom has no idea what that meant. She assumed he was not truly competent in his final days. Each day we were together, I blamed you for my father not loving me. I still blame you and little Donald. Stanley wept. The cat made unusual noises. Emily's face was emotionless, although inside she was in turmoil from what she just learned. Barbara, your mother, she'll live. Those ill-conceived bastard twins will die and meet you and my loving father-in-law in hell. You can all reunion there. The writing was on the wall for Stanley. After running and trying to fight, he realized it was over. Seeing the end near, he experienced a moment of peace that was followed immediately by joy. He accidentally revealed his truth when he smiled. You've not told me everything. What you failed to realize is that I don't need you to talk. Emily removed the fire, healed Stanley's hand, and restrained him magically. She read his palms, his lifelines, for his undisclosed truth. They told her everything. One of your twins is a yellow eye. Emily turned and spoke to the cat, her protector. We should have been more careful. Emily turned to finish her conversation with Stanley. If it takes the rest of my life, Stanley, or just the rest of the night, they will die. Stanley's pupils grew the size of quarters. Fear returned. His body grew warm and he shook. Don't harm my boys. Please, please don't. Emily hushed and quieted him with her finger gently pressed on his lips. Goodbye. In a single movement, she slashed Stanley's neck using her nails. Emily watched as his life force slowly left his body and the blood flowed onto her hand. The cat licked his palm. Stanley's hands gradually turned cold and then blue. Unaware that she was being watched, Emily grabbed the cat into her arms and walked in the direction of the hospital. Dear Donald, find where the boys are. Take any form you must. If you find them, detain them. I must go see my mother and daughter. With that, Emily released the cat and magically transported herself to Hartford Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut. She walked in to see her mother and daughter. Emily found her mother arrested. She was still in a coma.